Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, coming to you with my pearl handle pistol cufflinks given to me graciously by our content genius, Michael Rivers. Today we're reacting to Aiden Fucci. Aiden Fucci is a teen in Florida who just pled guilty to murder one. But before we get into that, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com. It's an effective way to remotely sign documents to get business done when you need to get it done. For example, if you're in another state and you've got a warrant in Minnesota and you can't get back here and you call me, hey, Rivs, I got to get something figured out because I got a second-degree assault. Can you see if you can quash the warrant? And, oh, what's the retainer? Oh, I can send you a retainer. You can e-sign it. If you download the app, you get 3 free signatures a month. It is an excellent way to remotely do business. So let's talk about Aiden Fucci. Aiden Fucci, at the time, was 14 years old. 14 years old when he stabbed Tristan Bailey. Let's talk a little bit about juvenile in the juvenile court system. When you are a juvenile, you don't have certain rights. You don't have the right to a jury trial necessarily, but you also, depending upon the crime, can be treated like an adult. Now, he was 14 years old. He was scheduled and he was certified as an adult. When you're that young, it is not guaranteed that you are going to be certified as an adult. If you're 16 and it's a crime of violence or a crime that would otherwise require a prison sentence, then you are presumed certified. And what does that mean to be certified? It means that even though you're a juvenile, you're going to be treated like an adult. If you're treated like an adult, then you are entitled to a jury trial and you're entitled to bail and a whole other host of things that you're not entitled to as a juvenile. But when you're 14, that is awfully young. Now, this kid socialized and fantasized about killing people. He told his classmates that he fantasized and had voices in his head telling him he should kill people. Red flags. Huge red flags, obviously, right? But, you know, first of all, kids are naive and young and don't really fully grasp the gravity of what people are saying. It's why they're juveniles. It's why they have juvenile court and don't treat them like adults all the time. And you think, oh, what a weird fucking kid. He's just not saying, you don't buy it. And why don't you buy it? You don't buy it because it just sounds so fantastic. But guess what? How many of these violent cases that we keep hearing, the Parkland shooter, like the guy in Monterey, who killed 12 people. We're hearing more and more and more, and it's becoming more normalized. So when somebody, your kid comes home from school and says, Johnny wants to blow up the school, you believe him and you talk to somebody so it doesn't happen. I think one of the worst things in the world would be aside from being the parent of the deceased, is to be a parent of the person who slayed the deceased. I mean, could you imagine how you'd feel if your son or daughter committed one of these horrible crimes? So he pled guilty today, and he is looking at life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, he is not eligible for the death penalty. Why not? It's bad enough. I mean, 114 stab wounds seems pretty heinous to me. But he's not, because he's 14. He's too young. And the youngest person ever to be sentenced to death was 14-year-old George Stinney. And this is back in 1944. He was born in 1929. And he was 14 years old, accusing of killing 2 white girls. A little African-American kid. He was sentenced and killed with a 5,380 volt shock. And this is a hallmark case because, I think it was after that, it sort of shocked the conscience that our government would kill a 14-year-old boy. And he was just a young kid. His conviction was later overturned in 2014, and he was found later to be innocent. He was convicted after a 3-hour trial. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of people are, it's easy. It's really easy to get worked up over heinous crimes, like the Murdoch trial. I mean, him, being accused of killing his son and wife. That is just horrible, right? And it's easy to say, oh, if you would do this, you should get the death penalty. I don't. This is reason enough alone why somebody who's 14 years old later exonerated, even if he wasn't exonerated, for the government to take the life of a 14-year-old boy is equally heinous. And so you wonder why I'm against the death penalty. The Innocence Project has overturned many death penalty convictions. Even one is one too many. But in this case, this Tristan Bailey, she was just targeted by this young kid. And, they've been litigating this case for 2 years. He's 16 now. He was 14 at the time. 14. You remember there was just recently a 6-year-old who brought a firearm to school and shot his teacher. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, his pants are too little to hold a gun. That's what they were told. But it's all about these missed signals. So you search the backpack of a little kid, because they were warned. People were warned in that particular instance. These juveniles, young kids committing crimes is all about forewarning, in my opinion. But in this particular case, this Tristan Bailey had been socializing with Fucci and another classmate before the crime happened, and she was last seen on a surveillance camera at 1:45 in the morning in cul-de-sac in her neighborhood, and then she didn't show up for Mother's Day brunch the next morning when everybody's like getting up or whatever they're doing. And so I don't know the facts of this as well as I don't have the file in front of me, obviously, but what the hell is she doing out at 1:45 a.m.? Not that that's she's to blame for anything. If my kids are out at 1:45 in the morning, something bad's going to happen. You're going to get a call from, you've got a call from a correctional facility, or you're going to have, or an accident or something, You want your babies tucked in at night. So the prosecutor and, the sheriff's department, they put out a statement congratulating everybody and what great police work they did. And I can understand that. And my heart goes out to this Bailey family because, and even Mr. Fucci, the young kid here, said he apologized to the family and to his own family. I mean, he put his own family through hell. I mean, this is another type of death. The death of his innocence, the death of his youth, the death of his freedom. So it really is a whole nother death altogether. So when this happens, everybody within, the ripple in the pond effect, everybody within that ripple is affected on both sides, for both sets of families. And it's just awful that they have to deal with this type of stuff. But if you, and I would, and here's the other aspect of this that, isn't really being talked too much about, but it seems to me that there's some psychological thing going on, and that, you would have wanted the defense lawyers in this case to have done a psychological workup, because I guarantee you, in order to certify him, they file a petition, the government does, and it wouldn't be presumed because he was so young, but they do a psychological evaluation. Then the defense can get their own done if they don't agree with it, and then you can have a trial on the issue of certification. But you need, aside from the certification issue, you'd also need to have some psychological evaluation for maybe a defense. Because if you had a mental health defense, like I have these voices in my head are telling me to kill, and I have to do what they say, otherwise they'll kill me or whatever. That's a mental health issue. And if you get not guilty by reason of mental illness, that's what happened with John Hinckley Jr., remember? With he tried to kill Ronald Reagan, and he was doing it because he wanted to impress Jodie Foster. I mean, what the fuck? The brain, everything in between here and here, there's such a fine line between sanity and not. We sort of take it for granted. When you have a kid like this displaying really what are symptoms of, and I'm not a psychologist by any stretch, but I know what parent schizophrenia is, and I know these violent tendencies can stem from that, and they can be uncontrollable. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer, but Jeffrey Dahmer knew his predilections, and he had a taste for killing, and a taste for depravity, and a taste for making victims. And I don't know if this is Jeffrey Dahmer in the making, or if it's just truly some psychological issue he had, but he's looking at life in prison without the possibility of parole. You might ask, and I would ask this question, if there's no plea agreement and you get the same sentence if you're convicted or not, because they can't give him the death penalty because he's 14. He was 14 when it happened. So why plead then? Well, from his own statement, he says, I just want to plead guilty. I'm sorry for the Bailey family and my family. So maybe it does himself some good to take some responsibility for it, so he's kind of in control of his destiny in a sense. And I just don't know, the answer to that question. It's only he can answer that question. And he probably didn't want to go through a trial. Probably didn't want to put the family through a trial. And he's 2 years older now, and 2 years older, 14 to 16, is far different than 28 to 30, right? So he's got a maturity level now that he didn't have 2 years ago. And he'll have another maturity level at 18 and 20 and 40. And sometimes, depending upon what kind of workup these lawyers did, a lawyer down there, I could see this kind of thing coming back to bite these guys in the ass. Biting the defense lawyers in the ass. And I don't know who they are. I don't know what kind of job they did, but I could see this coming back on post-conviction, saying this avenue was not explored. In other words, the mental health aspect for defense of mental illness was not explored. And then you have some experts, and all of a sudden they withdraw the plea, and then they start all over again with just a trial on the mental health side of things. One might wonder, what do I think of this kind of... First of all, it's hard to really give a thoughtful opinion with regard to this young man about leniency without it sounding callous towards the victim, right? And you definitely had a victim here. She was stabbed 114 times. She had wounds all over the place, which are indicative of defensive wounds on her arms and her hands, indicating a struggle. Right, so it's hard to do that. If we just talk about, without talking about this case in general, a young child at 14 years old does not have the mental capacity that you and I do, right? The male brain isn't fully developed to 24 or something like that, 24, 26, fully developed. Maybe it's 25, as my content genius was just kind of giving me the signs, Michael. But hard for me to really endorse a life sentence without the possibility of parole for a 16-year-old boy who was 14 when it happened. Do I think he should walk free? Hell no. But they let John Hinckley out, right? I think this is clearly the product of mental illness. Whether it probably doesn't rise to the level of a mental health defense, I don't know. But I just don't. I'm not like this George Stinney killing a 14-year-old boy after a 3-hour trial. Who the fuck would endorse that? Nobody. I don't care what the kid did. So, endorsing a life sentence for a young child like this, to me, there's got to be something different. I just can't get behind it. So, but at the same time, and I don't want it to sound callous towards the family of, this Miss Bailey who died a horrible death. I mean, you know what? Our kids are supposed to bury us. We're not supposed to bury them, We're supposed to be there for them. We're supposed to coddle them and hold them and watch them grow and have their grandbabies and, just it's supposed to be a wonderful time, So the moral of the story, not moral of the story. So this has been our reaction to Aiden Fucci, who just pled guilty and is getting a murder 1 sentence in Florida. Kind of, I don't have a lot of jokes in this one, guys. It's heavy. It's really heavy stuff. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for Patreon. If you're one of our Patreon subscribers, send me an email if we haven't sent you a hat, because we'll get you one. See you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, police is at my god.